What's up, guys? Welcome back to Muscle Minds with Scott Stevenson. I'm Scott McNally, and all of our programming is brought to you by you. Well, some of you, the people of Patreon. Thank you guys very much for your support. I try to get out early releases over on Patreon when I can, plus a little bit of bonus stuff here and there. We are also brought to you by TrenNutrition.com. Use our code THINK over there for high-quality third-party tested supplements and be your own bodybuilding coach. Go to byobbcoach.com. You can get Scott's book there, or you can get the hardcover at Amazon. We also have a link that I'll put in the description after the show. You can get a discount on the hardcover, I believe like $15 off. We were going to talk some about Cardarine today, and then we actually got a couple questions about Cardarine in the stream, coincidentally. Before we get started with that, I gotta tell everybody, Scott, I gotta tell everybody our conversation, like what happened right before the show.
Okay.
So I took my test shot, just standard testosterone, although it is from a UGO lab. Okay. I took my weekly test shot. Here's the thing. I know that, yes, splitting it into twice a week is probably a good idea, blah, blah, blah. I'm lucky to remember to take my shot. That's where I'm at right now. Okay. So we were getting ready to start the show, and I was like, okay, I have an hour. I'm going to take my shot real quick and go get ready. I took my shot, and I got what is known as like the Tren cough, okay? I didn't actually cough, but I could tell that it's trying to escape through my freaking lungs. Shortly after the injection, it wasn't during, it was after the shot. All of a sudden, I started like tasting that, just like a chemical taste. The chemicals basically trying to escape through my lungs. And what I've discovered in my life is that if that happens, anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours later, I get excruciating stomach pains. Like I'm talking 8 out of 10. On average, 10 out of 10 being like I have to go to the hospital, and it's been just about a 10, but I was too stubborn to go. For a long time, I didn't even connect it because it could happen 2-3 hours later. I'd get these stomach pains. So I'm dealing with this right now, guys. Like I'm feeling a little bit better. Scott showed me an acupressure trick, acupuncture trick pressure that I've been using on my wrist here. But I wanted to ask you, Scott, do you have any insight, man? What the hell is the Tren cough? What the heck is actually going on with that?
Oh, people have analyzed that at a deeper level than I can. They've talked about what might be going on.
Yeah.
The thing that you have that's in common with that, I think the simple mechanism would be that the volatile compounds in your injection, so the benzyl alcohol, for instance.
Yeah.
It comes in, everything comes in together. You go to the depot, and you're near an arteriole. You're near an artery, or maybe just a highly active capillary bed, but you're near some vessels with decent amount of flow. So it leaves there, and blood at rest, your blood circulates around. Average person has 5 liters of blood. Your cardiac output at rest is about 5 liters. So on average, every little red blood cell's making one trip around the whole system once every minute. So when that stuff, you go into you do inject, and you're near a high blood flow artery or a vein, whatever, just a vessel that's taking things out, and veins and arteries obviously connected, or you can end up having some of that stuff carried, goes everywhere, and some of it will go to the lungs. And the lungs are a site of respiration, meaning we think of respiration as oxidative phosphorylation, the use of oxygen, but respiration also means movement of gases or volatile substances. So gases can move across plasma membranes. That's how they get across the alveoli and into the capillary, the pulmonary capillaries. But you can have it go the other way. And that stuff, if you just, benzyl alcohol is relatively benign, but that's why they put it in so many injections. But once that stuff gets there, yeah, it can make its way. If it's in a high enough concentration, it'll be kind of like, not truly in a bolus, but once it leaves, it'll be in a high concentration as it's leaving there and floating around. It'll come out in your lungs. It'll go into your lungs. So it'll follow its concentration gradient from the pulmonary arteries and arterioles and the capillaries. And instead of going the way oxygen normally comes in, carbon dioxide goes out. That's concentration gradient dependent. So oxygen comes in to the pulmonary capillary hemoglobin, which is relatively desaturated. It goes down to concentration gradient. You pick up oxygen, carry it away to be used by the cells. Carbon dioxide goes the other way. Well, you don't have any benzyl alcohol normally coming in through your lungs, right? So there's Zippo in the arterial gas, alveolar gas in the alveoli, and you've got whatever came from the shot floating by, so it's going to go out, right? And when it makes its way out, of course, it's coming through the lungs. You're breathing in and out, expiring, inspiring, and some of that air is obviously it's coming out through your mouth, so you taste that shit.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where you can feel the burn sometimes too, like in your lungs, like. So that's the thing. Like with the sense of nausea, I wonder to what extent. I mean, that's not a direct effect on your GI tract, although your liver is obviously then getting presented with all that too, and your liver is an organ of your gastrointestinal system. So what the mechanism directly whereby like an acute strain of the liver would cause nausea, I don't know. But if I would suspect if you've got something not noxious like that, like benzyl alcohol that you can taste in your mouth, that would elicit something nasty in your mouth, would elicit nausea and everything that basically says, we need to get out whatever we may have been eating or we may have in our mouth.
Yeah.
So that's what nausea is about, is stop taking in whatever this nastiness is, right? That's in your mouth. Like there's something good, spit it out. Or it's like imagine like everyone's done this, right? You start eating something, you get some bad food, or I did it the other day. Luckily didn't get sick. I had some Greek yogurt. Okay. That I hadn't opened previously. It was, a week before the expiration date, whatever. And I was just eating it. And I've been putting, because it just kind of tastes good, bee pollen. I kind of like it. There's some health benefits to bee pollen, but I'm not looking for any magic bullet. But I like the taste of bee pollen. It's a little protein in there. And I throw that in as like the flavor of my just vanilla Greek yogurt, or if it's non-flavored. So it makes it a little bit crunchy too. It's not the same as granola, but it gives a little different texture. Yeah. So I'm eating my Greek yogurt and I'm kind of taking it down, and I'm like, I don't think that's the bee pollen that's giving it that texture. And it had curdled, right?
Oh.
And I got like, a third of the way down the thing, and I'm like, and it tastes a little bit sour too, but I was hungry, and I was like, just was kind of like a half meal that I was having as I was going about my day, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't get sick, but like part of me was like, oh, I don't want that in my system. So there's just a natural neurological phenomenon to get nauseated, stop eating when something tastes wrong, and like literally, I psychologically, consciously, I'm like, well, that's not good. I shouldn't eat that. But then when I thought like, ooh, that's rotten, immediately my appetite for it went away. It wasn't like, I'll just keep eating that. Yeah, right. So that's what I think may happen when you've got benzyl alcohol, for instance, that's volatile and coming out. I think the benzoate might be. I'm not sure about how volatile that is.
Yeah.
But benzyl alcohol, for sure, it's gonna evaporate and come out and reverse its way out of your circulatory system through your lungs to your mouth, and then when it's there, it's like your system's like, okay, dude, something's fucked up. Like, stop consuming stuff, and you'll have like in Chinese medicine, you'll have stomach. It's called stomach qi reversion.
Okay.
So normally your stomach qi goes down. You eat stuff and it goes down. It goes down, down, down. That's the direction of the energy movement. And when you go the other way, when it's going backwards, it's reverting. You have nausea. You have vomiting, and like that point, pericardium sick. Is this point here, the seasickness point?
Yes.
It's like an inch or so below.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I had you press on. It works phenomenally for nausea. It works great for seasickness.
And now that you mention that, I remember hearing it for seasickness. I didn't think about it at the time as you were explaining it today. Yeah.
It's an empirical point. It's on the pericardium channel, so it's not even on the stomach channel. But I first learned that this is kind of an aside, but when I was in California, I was a college professor. I started taking acupuncture classes kind of at night in the afternoons when I could get over there. And eventually, long story, I then became an acupuncturist. The idea was in part to bring the acupuncture and Chinese medicine back to my department because I think like 45% of our students at the University Cal Poly Pomona at the time, at least, were Asian American.
Okay.
And I went I don't know what I ate. I got food poisoning. Just felt awful. And I drove over to, and I was getting acupuncture treatments so I could experience them. I'm like, this is awful. I felt terrible, but I wanted to make my appointment, and I had a class after that. So I went in and I lied down with the student and the guy, and I'd seen him once before. And he's like, hey, how you doing, man? I said, I've been better, dude. I got some foods. I ate something, I'm not sure, and I just literally just threw up a few minutes ago. So sorry if my breath stinks. He's like, well, first let's take care of that. And he goes around. I didn't know anything about Chinese medicine really at the time. I was just a month into my first set of classes, and he puts needles in those 2 points, right, and stimulates them a little bit. And then starts asking me some more questions. And then he's like, oh, by the way, how's your nausea? And I'm like, oh, shit. There is none. It's totally gone.
Wow.
It was like he just like woke me up like, okay, no more nausea. Like, it's like, you're not dreaming anymore. Back to reality. Goodbye, nausea.
Yeah.
I was like amazed. I'm like how you do that. It's like I had something in my hand and he went, whoo, whoo. And I'm like, and now it's gone. Like, what?
Yeah.
How did that happen? So, and I've had that happen with numerous people that I've treated with nausea. There's some other points too. So anyhow, that's a cool little trick for people who are getting nauseated. I've used it when I've been eating a lot, like in an off season before. And I'm like, that was a rough meal, man. I'm like feeling tough here. Like, okay, just chill. We're going to sit here for a few minutes and I'll press on that point. And helps the qi go back the right direction, the direction of digestion and assimilation, et cetera, of your food energy. So
fascinating.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very cool. It's one of those. It's like this is just like it's one of those magic acupuncture points. It's like, okay, dude, that's just trippy. That there's no neurological connection in the body. Why pressing on the median nerve down near your wrist, that I know of. That should somehow affect your perception of nausea in your brain.
Yeah.
Right? Like how did that come about? But that's, ancient Chinese secret type of stuff.
Yeah, that's wild. And I'll tell you too, if you guys at home have never had, I'm just calling it Tren cough, I do not wish it upon you. I do not wish it upon anybody, even my worst enemy. That said, the first time I had gotten it was just horrific. Like, I'm talking over the top, bring you to your knees, Scott. And it was the whole like just visceral experience. That my gums were burning, my face was burning. I had like saliva running out of my mouth, and I'm just like just holding on for bare life. But I knew, having read on message boards, that this was a possibility. So when it happened, like, had I never known that, Scott, I literally would have thought like, this is the end right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is about, I'm going down. But I just kind of like grinned and bared it and held on. And of course it passed. And then I've hoped, hey, I hope it doesn't happen this time. But man, every once in a freaking while, I still get some level of it. And I'm going to tell you what, after I got it once, I was a lot more prone to get it after that. Like, I didn't get it for years. And then once I got it, I was a lot more likely to get it. So anyway, I hope you guys don't ever have to deal with that. Hey guys, so I'm seeing that like 35% of you are not subscribed to the channel, which on one hand is great. That means that YouTube is getting us in front of new people. On the other hand, that means that we might not see each other again if you don't hit the subscribe button. We have several bodybuilding podcasts each week. We've got our reaction videos. We're doing YouTube shorts. So let me encourage you right now to subscribe and hit the bell. And if you're enjoying this show, then please hit the like button and leave us a comment. We had a question that it was on Patreon. And there's a gentleman who was telling me, I believe, that he and his significant other were both getting good benefits from Cardarine. I believe that she wasn't using anabolics, and it may even come up like, hey, are there any female specific sides that I need to be concerned about with Cardarine, like virilization, stuff like that. I can't remember for sure, but I did tell the guy, I said, hey, from what I understood, there's research about it potentially being a carcinogen, right? And he came back to me with a couple studies, which I had shown you, that said they were, it had been shown to actually reduce cancer, I believe in bladder cancer specifically. So I said, Scott, what do you make of this? This is apparently an anti-cancer drug. At least that's what he's telling me. And he was going now by this, saying like, okay, so because it's anti-cancer, we're safe. Can you share with us some more insight on this topic, please?
So I am not a cancer biologist by any stretch of the imagination.
Which was the first thing he said to me when I texted him too.
Yeah, right. It's totally true. I do have a friend who has a PhD in molecular biology focused on cancer biology. So, and I helped her like study for her doctoral exams and that kind of stuff, her comprehensive exams. But I don't know jack squat about cancer biology. But so those papers, and we could provide the reference if someone wants to. If they're that interested, they probably already know of these papers. But there are various models of tumorigenesis that get used to test the carcinogenic nature of various substances or the anti-cancer nature of various substances. So there's all sorts of ways this can go on, but you've got obviously different types of cancer that comes about in different tissues, and the mechanisms underlying that are they're variable. They're all over the place, right? Yeah. You end up, cancer cells they're immortal cells. They just keep growing. They don't have the brakes on that normal cells do. It's like, okay, now we created the tissue in this area where we need it, or the organ is done growing. Like the tissue just keeps going. The cells just keep multiplying. And there's all sorts of ways that can happen, but it's definitely it's a mistake. It's like the widget maker that just keeps on making widgets, and all the widgets at the end of the production line filled the basket. Like, okay, we made our 100 widgets for the day, and the widgets just keep on coming. It's like, okay, what the fuck is wrong with our widget maker here? Cancer is widget maker gone awry. So the peroxisome proliferator activated receptor gamma substance, and has other actions too, which is Cardarine, has multitude of actions. And the basic line, the bottom line of this, and this has been known for, when it first came out that Cardarine could be carcinogenic, I looked into that. People have been talking about that for 10 years or longer, right? And depending on which model of cancer you look at, it is indeed carcinogenic. But in other models, it can be anti-tumorigenic. So it can be something that slows the development of tumors. So the thing is like, if something causes cancer in one model of cancer, well, then it de facto is carcinogenic. I think I used, when we talked, I used the sort of the logical fallacy or the inductive reasoning example that's a lot of times brought forth of, so are all swans white? And you need one example of a swan that's not white to disprove that. It's like, okay, there's a black swan, so that's not true. So that does not mean that swans can't be white. So is Cardarine potentially carcinogenic? Yes, because swans can be white. Is it potentially non-carcinogenic? Yes, because some swans can be black too. So swans can be both white and black, right? Black ones are a little more rare. I think if you weighed all the evidence, and I haven't done this, but you don't see the papers, at least, and they don't get talked about as well, because people aren't generally cancer biologists that I've seen in the bodybuilding realm that just happen to be bodybuilders who are cancer biologists at the same time, right? Who are saying, okay, look, if we weigh all the studies together, if you did a review of literature, you'll see 8 of the 10 studies, let's say, suggest that Cardarine either has no effect or it's carcinogenic. But then there's 2 studies that suggest it has anti-cancer actions. And he just happened to send you 2 studies that showed a negative effect on tumorigenesis, so the growth of tumors. So that doesn't mean, like, you find a black swan, that doesn't mean that all swans are black. And you find a white swan, that doesn't rule out the idea that the swans could be black. Yeah. So that's kind of like, if it is indeed a carcinogen, and in some circumstances it doesn't act like a carcinogen, but one of those things does not explicitly rule out the other, and that's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around too. It's like, because you don't want it, of course, to be carcinogenic if you're using it, right. And then the next level of that is like, okay, so what type of cancers are we talking about, and how relevant are those models of cancer to me? And the big question, and for instance, I go into this on the IGF-1 series of lectures. So I think it's a 2-part lecture series on John Meadows' site, because IGF-1 is involved with a lot of cancers. So the question is, in the case of IGF-1, and let's say with Cardarine too, does it initiate tumorigenesis? So if you don't have cancer, is it going to give you cancer? Or if you already have cancer, is it going to speed up the proliferation of those cancer cells?
Yeah.
Is it going to worsen your cancer? So does it cause cancer? Or does it worsen cancer? In some cases, the question could be yes to both of those. In some cases, the question could be yes to one and not the other. And in some cases, the question could be no, it slows the progression of cancer. So it has an anti-cancer action. Yeah. So it can be neutral, positive, or negative for cancer in terms of turning on cancer or speeding up cancer. So it's not as simple as, yeah, it's a carcinogen. No, not necessarily. For some people, it would never cause any cancer potentially. Right? For someone else who has a genetic proclivity for one of those types of cancers, and that's at least like, not that I'm suggesting this is, a layperson should go in there and say, well, I don't have any family history that I know of for these types of cancers that it causes, so I'm good to go. You don't know that for sure, right?
Right.
But that would be, something that's at least sort of a first screening, is to say, okay, it causes these types of cancers. I have no family history of these types of cancers. I'm going to watch my values for this, but still, like that's armchair medicine, right? And I'm not suggesting people do that, but it's at least a way, because people are going to take these risks. People are going to use IGF-1, and they're like, you know what? I'm going for broke. I got 5 years or 10 years to be the best bodybuilder I can, and I'm going to just cross my fingers that IGF-1 doesn't initiate cancer. Because I have that propensity, unbeknownst to myself, that there's a cancer lying in wait to be turned on, and the same could hold true for Cardarine. On the other hand, it could be that hold on, maybe Cardarine could be preventing a particular cancer that you might have a tendency to get. So it's not a black or white thing. So that's just kind of a biological overview of a very superficial overview, and hopefully technically correct as far as carcinogenesis goes, but the details I don't think anyone even cares about.
All right. Would you think that the cardiovascular benefits, this is from Andrew Ritter, from Cardarine would outweigh the cancer, especially with the heart health issues bodybuilders have?
So you asked like some of the world's best athletes, they've done these kinds of, I can't remember the exact question, but they've done these kinds of there's at least kind of one study, like if you could win the Mr. Olympia, or you could win a gold medal and you would die 5 years later, would you do it? And some people say, yeah. So whether it's worth it, right? Like, I don't know, let's say you're someone who all 4 of your grandparents died of cancer. Your mom died of cancer. Your dad died of cancer. Each of those was just a horrible death. All your pets died of cancer. I'm dealing with cancer with Suki, been dealing with it for, several years now, battling that. My grandmother died of cancer. My dad died of cancer. My grandfather, I think he might have had cancer when he passed. I'm not a big fan of cancer. I don't like cancer, one bit. No one who does, right? I mean, maybe there's some evil people out there, but Chris Pisarcik is someone who people may remember from years ago. He was a good friend of Big Dave Smith, who I think we mentioned here before. He's been around for a while, and Chris had cancer. He fought cancer for years, and he was a client of mine. Okay. So for someone like that, it was like, there ain't no way in hell I'm risking anything that could possibly cause me cancer. Nope, scratch it from the board, ain't going there. Cancer can just, cancer can blow me, if I can say that for you. So cancer, no friggin' way. I'm not doing it. I can get, cardiovascular benefits just by training harder, or maybe I get 10%, less increase in VO2 max or whatever. Those gains, I don't care if they turn me into, an aerobic animal. It's not worth the slightest risk of cancer. Yeah. Someone else might be, we all die. I don't really have anyone to live for per se. All I've got is this. I'm one of those guys. I don't want to live past 50 if I can't just be a beast, can't be an animal. I kind of wonder sometimes, it's a bit of a tangent, but I wonder sometimes about, you know, people who are extreme athletes who are just like extraordinary individuals who die young, like almost in their prime or just after. It's almost like I wonder if in some cases for them, and have to ask these people, they wouldn't want to live being anything other than that which they've actualized in their adult life. This is who they are. And when they're no longer that badass athlete, they're no longer that badass in whatever they're doing, then they're no longer alive in their mind's eye. So someone might be of that perspective. That's completely up to them to say, you know what? Living on the edge, pushing things, that's where I feel that I am living a high quality life. They may not phrase it that way, but in those cases, it's worth it for them because, it's better to burn out than to fade away. That might be some of their perspective. So they're like, I'm going for it, and I'm going to just cross my fingers, but I'm going to take risks, because if you don't take risks, then, you don't maximize what your potential is. And that's where it's at for me. So that's totally that person's decision to make. I'm really kind of, I guess, sort of open as opposed to like telling people, how to make decisions about what's important in their life. I can't. I don't have the sense that I have any. I can give them my thoughts and what it would be, but I'll tell you this. I'll answer it this way, so I'm not doesn't seem like I'm dodging the question. For me personally, thinking about, let's say something just snap my fingers and I've got 20% better aerobic capacity. So during like Widowmaker style sets, I can maybe get a few more reps or whatever else. I don't know, all in all, that in the bodybuilding context is going to mean that I could produce meaningful muscle growth beyond what I could without that cardiovascular capacity. People do gas out during sets, and it can make the workout seem easier. This is like people say with Cardarine. You may have more experience with personally with clients with Cardarine. It's like they go into their workouts and they can get by through those volume workouts without it being so hard, right? For me, unless I know that translates then to maybe more muscle mass, which I can't say for sure, because there's this volume dose response. I don't care about making things easier. Make that shit as hard as possible. Yeah. Right? Hit me over the head with that shit, and let's watch me knock it back. So I'm not looking to necessarily make things easier. I do like unraveling the mystery of how to make things better. And I don't know that improved aerobic capacity per se in the context of muscle hypertrophy is gonna elicit that. Someone might find, for me at least, someone else might be like, if they're psychologically sort of knocked down by like, oh fuck, I'm feeling winded, I'm hurting during the workouts, and they just don't have it in themselves, and they get a massive placebo effect because they can tell it's working cardiovascularly, then it might work for them. But from me, that's a neurological, psychological effect and a cardiovascular one. But I think that can be overcome by simply buckling down, balling up, and training harder, and figuring out how to optimize your training without having that in place. That wouldn't be my first line strategy to enhance muscle growth. Would be something that enhances cardiovascular capacity. I don't think it's not going to hurt. I don't think about Cardarine being working against. I'll throw this out. This is just purely hypothetical. So if you look at the molecular basis of the adaptation to endurance exercise versus resistance exercise, they're almost mutually exclusive, right? So you've got mTOR and AMPK sort of being at the central of muscle growth and adaptation to endurance exercise. And who's the name of the first? There's a paper out there. I can't remember it's just slipping my mind, but they analyzed in this particular paper directly like what genes are being turned on, because you see a categorical difference in terms of the adaptation to endurance exercise. Marathoners don't have big, bulky legs, right? Muscle fiber size is not on a premium when it comes to doing endurance exercise. Aerobic capacity is. Having lots of capillaries, having lots of mitochondria, having the right myosin for efficiency, economy. It's a very different adaptive strategy to endurance exercise than gaining muscle mass. So I don't know that this is the case per se. There's probably data out there. I just haven't looked for it directly with Cardarine. But I could imagine that if Cardarine's effects are directed towards improving endurance performance, that it could also be working against muscle growth. Because the molecular programs of those two adaptations are at two ends of the spectrum of what can happen. There's some overlap depending on how you train. You can get muscle growth and also get improvement in muscle endurance for sure. So it's just for me, so physiologically, without having looked into the molecular mechanisms that might be counter to, like turning off mTOR, for instance, something like that, which would be an anti-cancer action if it actually does that, by the way. But generally speaking, but it wouldn't be my first thought, and I'm not big on the cancer risk either. That doesn't. Yeah.
That's no. If you're looking at it for like, I mean, and he was just saying like for health, because like you know, we're stressing
lipids and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're stressing our health by doing bodybuilding. Yeah, I think there's other options. You know what I mean? It's not the only thing that you could use. That's just my opinion.
Hey, what's up, guys? I have a lot of people who reach out to me on a regular basis who are trying to more effectively reach their goals. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they're not getting enough protein. And there's only so much chicken breast we can eat through the day, but we can easily add a high-quality protein supplement to boost those numbers up. True Nutrition has just about every protein powder you can think of, from high-quality whey isolate. If you don't tolerate lactose, then you could use their beef isolate, or you could use their pea protein isolate if you don't eat animal products. They literally have everything you'd think of. I've believed in them for like a decade before they advertised with us, and they never went out of their way to say like, hey, we want to promote our stuff through you. I literally asked them because it's a company that I believe in, and at the end of the day, I want to see you guys reach your goals as effectively as possible. So if you use our code THINK at True Nutrition, you'll get some savings, you'll help to support our programming, and you'll get some high quality products to more effectively reach your goals faster.
I don't know if you'd have anything on this one, Scott, but George had asked us, could you touch on the potential Cardarine to alter muscle fiber type? Long-term effects on size, oxidation, substrate metabolism, and people experiencing strength loss could be from the fiber change?
That's just what I was getting at, is that I haven't looked into that. That'd be a fun topic to maybe try to cover. So off the top of my head, I just sort of theorized to that effect.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see what's out there, like in the animal literature. Shifting towards a slower isoform, which I would totally expect if it's going one direction. Not that in of itself is the worst thing, because there's some studies with bodybuilders showing they have lots of type 1 fibers that aren't necessarily big. So this is pointing to the idea of hyperplasia. But yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe I'll look into that. We can dig into that. It'd be kind of fun to see, because I looked into that, I think, a long time ago, but it's been so long. Cardarine kind of fell off the map for a bit, and now it's making its way back, I think.
It seems to be, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
that's how it is with so many things.
Yeah, no kidding. I don't usually suggest it. I know in general, I don't usually say like to my people I work with, like, hey, we should get Cardarine, or, this would be, but, if somebody has it, they want to use it, then, we've used it then. The only time I've been where I've felt like it's been more of a benefit is with guys that are doing like endurance stuff or like MMA. I've used it with MMA fighters, and I found it to be like super beneficial there. And I found it to be personally beneficial too after having the long bug and dealing with all of that. And I kind of used it to kind of get my endurance back up. But I found that I could even use a smaller dose. You always hear of it being dosed at 20 milligrams. Everybody's taking 20, but I'd try like, what happens with 5? What happens with 10? And I'd see, do I get any benefit from that? Because at the same time, it's like, I feel like I got good benefit from it, but I do recognize there are these risks. So I'm going to use it short term, and I'm going to try to keep the dose as low as possible too,
Yeah. I don't even know I haven't looked into it. I don't even know what human studies show as far as dosing and where those numbers come from.
Yeah.
For the human doses, where those suggestions come from. So that'd be interesting. That could be a fun little deep dive to do.
Yeah, that would be cool. We had a guy who was talking about preparing to do his first cycle, and I mean, there's a lot to this because he says maybe he'll use test or maybe he'll use Rad 140 for his first cycle. And he said he's concerned about liver health. Would you think that getting a liver scan and blood test before starting would be a good idea? We always suggest getting lab work before you do anything, and there'd be a lot of labs he'd want to see. But what about like any kind of scans or anything like that? Would it be worth preemptively looking at things at that level?
It's not going to hurt if you can pay for it. Your doctor will do it for you, or whatever. You have access to it. Then I would never dissuade someone from doing something proactive to make sure they're in a healthy position before they put their health at risk potentially. Yeah, for sure, man.
I feel like as far as his cycle thoughts, he should comment on one of the episodes of Drugs and Stuff with Dave Crossland. I feel like we've talked a million times there about first cycles, and I don't know about this Rad 140 idea. I don't know what I think about that, overall.
There's one influencer, I won't say who it is, but I think he said that this stuff was as good as Anavar. I think that was like literally in his like personal experience. So that's kind of all it takes is one person to say, "Oh, this stuff is just the bomb," right? And and maybe they happen to have an affiliate code for it. Whatever. Yeah, or a connection. So, I mean, it's smart to step in closely. Right. I think it's a better question for Dave and you to go into, but the question is, what sustainability? What are you going to plan on doing? Like, where are you going from here? What's the goal of the single cycle? Like, I think depending on how old someone is, like if this is a 50-year-old guy, he's got a different, and he's been training for 35 years, right? It's got a different perspective than someone who's 20 has been training for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And so what kind of cycle makes sense? Like, are you a natural competitor? You got your natural pro card. You're trying to take it to the next level. You're pretty astute as far as your health goes, and you're tuned in on your training, your diet, that sort of thing. You're in a totally different position than someone who's just started off and doesn't know what the heck's going on. I mean, I talk about like the purpose. I talk about biological interindividuality. I have a section in my Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach book, and this is like, it just popped in my head as a good resource. And basically some people will see it. I think I had someone post like, "Oh, this is great scare tactic stuff." But I go into the negative side effects. That I have the section where I sort of explicitly state a number of the various negatives that can be associated with steroid use. That doesn't always come through. It's so nothing in my book is about how much to use or when to use it or that kind of thing. It's about the factor as well. I guess technically it's kind of about when to use it, but it's about the things that you would contemplate, not in terms of what to use and how much to use, but whether you should do it in the first place.
Yeah.
And what you're getting yourself into. I just hate to see, like, this was a topic that was running through my head just earlier today, is there's so many pro cards being given out, and I think there's a lot of people who are starting off and they're going right into gear use and doing their first cycle. They're not thinking through what they're going to do, and they're not really prepared to say, let's say I get an extra 25 pounds of muscle mass when I get on. So how are you going to come off that? Are you going to be okay? Are you going to keep training if you come off like you're 22 right now and you do that when you're 24? Are you planning on staying on to hold that muscle mass? Like, what's your exit strategy? And I think that's worth thinking about, because now it's just like, oh, everyone's doing it. Like, we'll go in there. This is kind of a crazy analogy, but like, it's like there's this awesome club, and everyone's raving out in there, right? Yeah. And they're dropping X or whatever, and no one's talking about like what happens the next day.
Yeah,
like you're all fucked up, man, and do you have to drink like a pot of coffee just to make it into work the next day? Like, do you have addicted propensities where you're going to end up wanting to do that again? And now you're going to raves all the time. It's like everyone's going in, like the line of people is just streaming in. Like, that's the thing to do. Like, there is evidence mounting, and Victoria knows more about this than I do, I'm sure, but like there's evidence suggesting like the average onset, like there's 15-year-olds using steroids, 13-year-olds using steroids, lots of young people using steroids. It's just kind of become the thing to do.
Yeah, it really seems that way.
Yeah, and your prefrontal cortex isn't developed, but technically you're like, or on average around 25, where you can make clear decisions about these sorts of things, and you're changing your brain development when you're starting earlier. And like people are just like, we're going to the fucking club, man, and we're going to drop X and dance our night away. And it's like, okay, so what do you do when you come out of there? Like, what are you left with? And that's sort of the thing I think is more important than, I think the health thing is great, but your psychological health and your life satisfaction health, so to speak, of like what's going to happen years down the road after this first cycle. And some people are like, I can just do a cycle, and they stop and like, yeah, I did a cycle, no problem. Like they don't have an addictive personality.
Most people though, it's not just that, but it's just like all the benefits. You spend all this time training naturally, you make minimal gains, then you all of a sudden fast forward, and if you, especially like you love bodybuilding, right? You're having fun, and now you're finally seeing all this progress. The next thought is, well, if I gain 10 pounds now and I do this again, that means I'll be 20 pounds up. And then in 2 years, I'm going to be 50 pounds. I don't know anybody, or rarely, I should say very rarely, do I know somebody who's done one cycle.
Yeah, right. It's not a one cycle thing. Yeah. So, you've got a range of like I said, the guys who have been training his entire life. This is his thing. He's done natural competitions. He's like, I've had my kids. I'm not worried about fertility. My testosterone's low anyway. I'm going to get on a cycle. He's be one of those guys where I bounce back and forth between TRT and, sports TRT or super TRT or whatever you want to call it, right? Yeah. And he had some Primo in there and maybe a little NPP or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
And that guy, like, he's an adult. He knows what he's doing. He's already got, his health under control. He's got a doctor he's working with. It's a totally different scenario than someone else who doesn't have that kind of experience or wisdom or that comes with age and having trained for decades. So anyway, end rant on that. Let's get the next one.
All right. I'm just taking these in order. I did see who was that had a question about gut health. Sebastian, I think it was. Yeah. So I did see your question. I saw you posted it again. So we'll get to that one after this one, which was next. Can you speak on glycerin as part of a pre-workout? We talked about this a long time ago, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. I've got a post on Instagram. You have to scroll back a little bit, but yeah, it helps with pumps quite a bit. You want to be careful because it can cause, from a gastric distress, it can cause some gastric distress. You want to drink it with plenty of water. Don't hold back on that. But yeah, you can add like anywhere from like a tablespoon. I had worked my way up to like one protein scoops worth, like a 30.
I remember you saying that.
Do that in there.
So it took you time to get there?
Yeah, and I also knew I needed to drink a lot of water with it. So otherwise, I'm not going to say who it was, but there was once someone who was an IFBB, a well-known IFBB pro, and I was giving this to someone else who wanted to try it, right? And he's like, "Oh, that's cool. What's that about?" And I said, "I'll try some of it." And I said, and he was not far from a show, and he knew that was part of the issue, but he knew he was going to be posing after his workout, and I think he wanted to make sure someone else was going to size up his form, his condition for the show. So I think he may have held back his water so he'd stay dry, and look good. I think maybe, just a little bit. Like he wasn't like just chugging water because he didn't want to have spilled over. Not the show wasn't that day or the next day. He just
wanted to look harder while posing.
Yeah, right. So he held his water back. He's like, well, I can get a good pump from this. But you need to have the water in there for the gastric absorption and not to have some GI issues. So I'm trying to think what the relative dose was. I think it was like one up to like 1 gram per kilogram, if I'm correct. Which could be a good bit. Like that would be density is close to that of water. So that's like that would be, but this is like with endurance training, spread out over an hour or so with plenty of water.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to drink more water than you probably, if when in doubt, double your water intake or your fluid intake with your inter-workout. But yeah, I would just titrate it up. If someone of my client, they said, "How should I give this a shot?" I said, "Yeah, start with a tablespoon, so the big ones, and just throw that into your inter-workout, right? And throw an extra cup of water in there with it, and just see if you notice the difference. The water in itself might help.
Yeah.
Extra sodium can help. You can throw some sea salt or something like that in. That works really well. I've got, I used to carry around a little shaker. It was like a little medicine bottle that that I had from one of my dog's prescriptions, and I had that in my workout bag for a decade, and I was just refill it with sea salt right before I go work out. I just have a little slurp of that. It was just the salt, like pour it in my mouth and swallow it down. Massive pump from just adding the salt beforehand.
Yeah.
So
salt
more so probably than the glycerol. Yeah. So you do all those things: carbs, some extra sodium, some glycerol,
plenty of fluid,
right? And if you're having inter-workout, like while you're dieting down, you can take a workout where you'd be like, I'm getting zero pump at all, and you can have a really nice pump, right?
Yeah.
And
just to add to that too, our hydration needs. Oh, is she doing all right?
She's chewing on boxes that I need to have. Yeah, she chews on everything she can find. Here you go, chew on this.
Our hydration needs change day to day too. So especially like season to season, it's getting hotter outside. So because I work with people who tell me, oh well, I drink a gallon every day. And, that gallon every day might be great at one time of the year, or even like stress. How stressed are you right now? Or how did you sleep last night? I feel like we can, we end up saying, I hear people say, or I've experienced like, well, my workout wasn't that good today, but I also didn't get a lot of sleep, or we had a really busy day at work. And I found that you can kind of make up for that by, okay, I've got a busy day at work, or okay, I didn't get as much sleep. Well, why don't I hit the water harder today? Make sure I get plenty of salt in all my foods, even bump it up a little bit more than normal, maybe even take an electrolyte supplement. And then when I get into the gym, make sure that I'm like ultra hydrated to kind of combat the fact that the environment wasn't as perfect today. And guess what? I found that that's super helpful,
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of people, when they're kind of stressed out, they just, you sort of fall like you're in sort of a somnolent state.
Yeah.
Where you might neglect your water drinking and you don't drink as much water. You end up going the opposite direction because your body's like, okay, it's time to I want to go to sleep. I want to take a nap.
Yeah.
And so, you could end up neglecting your water. So going the other way, it's not going to hurt. Like water toxicity is a thing, but you really have to push your water pretty hard for that actually to happen.
If you're drinking a gallon a day and you add a liter or two beyond that, you're going to be all right.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, for sure. So the glycerol is cool. It's for some people it's a game changer. You should make sure you don't get sick.
Yeah.
Don't get nauseated, and drink the extra water because you want the water there too. Just because water is the basis of the pump. It's a fluid shift. So you want to have that coming in. I mean, the water, when it makes its way out of your gut into your bloodstream, that water is immediately available. It's not, you don't have this massive expansion of your body water content or of the water in your bloodstream, but you are providing it right there initially. And the main thing is getting the glycerol out of your gut. If this just sits in your gut, then that's when people get sick. So that's where you want is to have it dilute enough so that it can make its way out easily.
All right. Well, speaking of gut, what's the best way to restore gut health? Having indigestion while bulking. I'm eating clean, whole foods only.
Have to know what those foods are.
Yeah.
It could be developing a food intolerance if it's all the same foods all the time.
Point. Yeah.
Are there any probiotics in there? How much fiber is in there? You'd have to really analyze what it is that could be causing this. It may just be that the food is so high that you just need a break. I just talked about this in a client consult the other day. Is having like a fasting day, or like even when bulking, like kind of a protein sparing modified fast day, a low calorie day, like once a week, can reset your gut. And John Meadows used to do like a fasting day sometimes for people to kind of reset the gut, and it can work really, really well. So there's so many things, but look at a probiotic or a symbiotic where you've got some both the bacteria in there and some fiber to feed as well. Adding fiber, I like Benefiber. You can get it at Walmart or whatever. It's a nice soluble fiber. It seems like it works really well for lots of people. It mixes perfectly. You can't even tell it's in water or anything. You can put on your cereal. You could put it in your rice. You could put it in water. But yeah, you'd have to like sit down and look at the whole diet and just see what else. What are some other basic things? Did he say he has GERD and reflux or not?
I think he said acid reflux he was dealing with.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonder about. Let me throw a couple out. So I'm with you. Like we could throw a digestive enzyme at him, but what if he's eating something that he's got an intolerance to? Are we? We're kind of creating a Band-Aid then. Like, oh yeah, my digestion's better, but you're just kind of Band-Aiding a problem where had you removed that particular carb. Like not everybody handles oatmeal really well. It's just fermentable fibers don't jive with them, or too much fermentable fiber doesn't jive with them. So maybe there's something like that. And if that was the case, then I wouldn't want to just take an enzyme on top of that. I like, as far as enzymes go, Now Foods has one called Super Enzymes, and it has a little bit of ox bile per cap as well, which a lot of them you just get your basic enzymes, but it kind of has like a little bit of that, a little bit of HCl, and I found it's just kind of a nice, well-rounded enzyme. So I prefer that one, and I think it'd be a great idea for anybody who's really pushing food to be able to use an enzyme. But I would also want to know, like, is there something going on with that? And the other thing is that when we're really pushing food, I think that we chew less. We're tending to just try to like bite, swallow. Right. And if you take your time, we want to be able to break that food down more. I would try to pinpoint, well, where are these stomach issues happening? Is there a particular point of the day that it's consistently, is it always like, 3 o'clock? Yeah. Well, I think 3, 4 o'clock, I always get a lot of acid. Well, what did you eat before that? Look at things like that. I think could be something to consider too.
And do a FODMAP analysis. You can find lists. There's one in my book too. Do a FODMAP analysis and see if that's causing issues too.
Yeah, you do, and you do consults, Scott. So, and this strikes me as the kind of thing. I'm not trying to make this as like a plug or an advertisement, but this is literally the kind of thing you'll do a consult with to be able to say like, let's break this down and figure it out. And that's what it would really take to get an in-depth answer. Yeah.
You can eat, someone who's been doing the chicken and rice things for years and they can't tolerate chicken and rice. Like, those are whole foods. It's like, they're the wrong ones for you. It just doesn't work in this context at this point in time in your sort of dietary history. Yeah. So there's a million things. I've got it. There's a chapter in the book too on looking at that, but Enzymatica makes some good digestive enzymes too. That are pretty badass, and they have one with a probiotic, or one or two varieties with a probiotic in them as well. The ox bile is good. I mean, Tutka is can help too. Just in general, it's not a bad thing to have for your liver.
My stomach's coming around, by the way. I'm starting to.
Oh, good.
Starting to feel all right. Okay. I was hanging on by a thread there for a minute. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, good, man. I'm glad. Yeah, you got that out now. It's circulated through your blood enough times that you got it. You expired it. Without expiring yourself.
It leaves me exhausted, though. I'll have to take a nap after this just to reset. I was going to work out, but that's not going to happen at the moment. What about greens formulas? Let's see. We're running low on time, but what about greens formulas? Things he says. What do you guys think of AG1 or other advanced greens alternatives?
Yeah, there's AG1 is the huge thing. Like, they've got so many people that are their affiliates now, like all these big name folks, and I think there's something to that, right? I don't know specifically. I don't know of any direct evidence. In general, we don't see that supplements outperform whole food in terms of health parameters, but if you're someone who doesn't eat any whole foods, right? You don't have any vegetables in your system. I don't think that's a bad option at all. So, yeah, there are some people that just like vegetables, whatever. Maybe their mom, forced them to eat veggies before they could have dessert when they were kids or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's something to say for those greens formulas. There's obviously health benefits of the ingredients per se. So yeah, if you've got it, that's not a bad. I think they're not bad insurance policies. You potentially could, with more time, and that's the thing. Like nowadays, our lifestyles are such that we're just hustling and bustling. We just don't have the time to cook our own food and find fresh food and go to the farmers markets and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a second best option, I think, to try to supplement the phytonutrients through a greens formula. In some way, shape, or form. It's kind of like multivitamins. I mean, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone who's going to actually become truly deficient. Although it can happen. You can have if you eat too much almond butter, your iron stores can go really, really low over time. If you're just doing a jar of almond butter a day, that can actually happen nowadays. Even in people that have a normal hematocrit, they can have low ferritin levels because of that.
Okay.
So yeah, that's like an example that just popped in my head. So you can get sort of out of whack potentially with eating a normal diet. It's not like you're traveling across the Atlantic on a boat, and you end up with scurvy. Like those sorts of things aren't going to happen to most people because they do have enough variety. But this is a nice advantage. It's just like with vitamins. Like unless you have an overt deficiency, it's going to be very difficult to see. Exception maybe B12. Sometimes people get an energy burst from that, but you don't typically see like some major ergogenic effect. But the placebo effect could be there. And if there is some deficiency that you're unaware of that you can remedy, then not a bad thing. It's just cost to benefit ratio. If you got the money, and most people who are taking those things have the money, then there's no adverse consequence. It's kind of like another example, like take nutrient timing. If you don't even think it works per se, hold on a sec. I have a little monster right here that just wants to get on my lap.
Hi, Jesse.
I know it's a little monster. I know you're going to nibble on my ear, aren't you? I know I love you too. We're almost done.
She looks like an angel. She would never do anything wrong. She would never bite on anything she wasn't supposed to bite.
No.
Including your headphone cords. She would never do that.
She always has to have like something, either a finger or it's constant. This whole thing, she may grow out of it. I bet. My Betsy was like that when she was young. She had real strong jaws, and she just wanted to work them all the time. Yeah, she has a huge bone here. She's been nibbling. That's worked well. But let's take nutrient timing. Like let's say that being strict with nutrient timing isn't. You don't really think, whatever. The evidence doesn't convince you, but there's literally no evidence that I know of where it's going to have a negative effect.
Right? Yeah, there you go.
So why not? Yeah. Why not? Throw it in there. So with the AG1, are you going to end up with? That maybe if you start taking like 10 servings a day, you could have some issues, right? But taking it as suggested, you're unlikely to have a negative effect. So.
I should get back on a greens formula. Scott, this is completely anecdotal, but every time that I did a contest prep and I didn't use a lot of green veggies through the prep, I'd get sick. Every time that I did use a lot of green veggies, I didn't get sick. And that included times when I used green formulas. I used, what was it? I got a bunch of them from Project AD. Joe Binley sent me some stuff out one year for a prep. And you just work it in as part of your plan,
Yeah. Yeah. So, phytonutrients have some, talking about anti-cancer benefits. There's potentially spices do as well. Like that's, I think, an underutilized thing is, a lot of spices have strong antioxidant effects.
Yeah.
Right? Cinnamon is like, for instance, like, hey, I know, there you are again. Yes, you're just. Okay. Ungeheuer, jetzt musst du runter. Jetzt musst du unbedingt runter. Nur für eine Sekunde.
We'll get out of here, Scott. I wanted to mention one comment from Tanya Miller that said earlier She when you were talking about that the pressure point,
Oh.
she said there are apparently some nerves in the ears that ameliorate things like migraines, which is why some people get a piercing in the little tab in their ear. Is she talking about like this piece, this little flap piece?
Auricular acupuncture is an entire branch of acupuncture. At least in Arizona, I'm not sure about Florida, but in Arizona, you can get licensed as an auricular acupuncturist. The auricle of the ear is the outer ear.
Okay.
So all this outer stuff, outer, middle, inner ear. The outer ear is the auricle.
Yeah.
So there is an entire. You can look up online. There's multiple maps, different sort of schools of auricular acupuncture.
Uh-huh.
And so, there are 100 points at least on the ear.
Huh.
The germinal layer during embryonic development that eventually becomes the nervous system also eventually becomes the outer ear, as it turns out.
Oh, really?
So there's a developmental connection between our nervous system and our outer ear, which provides, whether it's coincidental, that provides sort of a biological basis whereby we could affect nervous system activity. So the nervous system basically controlling a lot of what goes on in our body in conjunction with our endocrine system. Whereas we could affect the nervous system, which controls everything one way, shape, or form, by stimulating the outer ear. So the idea is that you have an inverted fetus, or embryo, or it would be a fetus. So the head of the upside down baby would be here, the lower ear, where you have an earring, and then the spine. I can't really show you here, but there's the spine as part of the inner ear, and I've forgotten the names of a lot of these. It's anatomical names for all the different aspects of your outer ear that you know when you do auricular acupuncture. So yes, you can treat migraines there. You could treat migraines in various ways depending on, in Chinese medicine, why the migraine is manifesting. So if it's an efficiency migraine, because you got blood deficiency, or you got a liver excess migraine, you would treat the liver or maybe the spleen, or even the heart, where the shen is, the brain, the mind is. Like one thought that's kind of like, this is one of the cool little things, like what she sort of mentioned there, is that the spot where people typically get their a standard earring right there. Hold on for a sec. Hey, 9, come on. Don't show him. She's having a cardboard breakfast.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, it's okay. That spot, you see pirates would typically have these earrings. Like,
yes, they do. Yeah,
and that's where the eye is. That's the spot for ocular issues in Chinese medicine. That's where the eye is, because that's on the head. The upside down baby it's a homunculus. Actually, this is one of the examples of homunculus. So it's a mapping of the body onto the outer ear. So this homunculus has the head.
Wait, I thought that's a homunculus.
I'm a homunculus.
Oh, okay.
Which is a derivative. I derived that nickname for homunculus from the word homunculus.
Okay.
Because homunculus is a mapping of the human in some way, shape, or form. In this case, a homunculus on the ear. Homunculus was I was like a small man growing into a larger man, being the bodybuilder. Is like,
some of you guys will get that. Some of you guys will know what we're talking about.
I figured no one's ever going to have that nickname like that.
No, God, no.
So anyway, because I didn't want to have someone else impersonating me, or me inadvertently impersonating them on another site with the same name. Anyway, so that's where the eye is, and the idea was that somehow pirates figured out, because they need to have good vision, long distance, to see across the seas. So they're constantly stimulating that acupuncture point by having an earring in the acupuncture point on the ear for the eye.
Mm-hmm.
So that's to improve their vision as they're looking across the far seas. That's sort of the lore or the explanation for, like, why else would pirates have earrings?
Yeah.
Just fashion? that maybe that came about because someone figured that out. Some pirates traveled to the Far East, and some acupuncturist says, "Oh, we put earring here and help you see better over the seas," right? And then it took off.
I could see that.
That was my bad Chinese accent.
Oh no, yeah. Well, I was not even going to mention it. I was just going to carry on. So we'll get this thing wrapped. But I did want to say one great comment here. I didn't realize this. I'm making my own veggie fruit blend from True Nutrition. I didn't know they did that. So I'm going to have to check that out because I have to place an order for some more protein soon. And I'd love to deal with this one in the future, Scott, because Tanya Miller had a question. This is something I'd just be my own curiosity. Here's one for you. Why does clenbuterol make you pee more? And is there anything you can do to ameliorate? Peeing at least 2 times a night reliably is not cute. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that, because here's my as somebody who, as a coach, I'd say it's almost 10 years. Next year is going to be 10 years full time, Scott, as coaching. Mm-hmm. So that's you see a lot of people, right? Thank you. It kind of blows my mind. It's already been a decade. You see a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people use Clen. I've helped a lot of people do contest preps. There is what I call a diuretic-like effect to Clen.
Absolutely.
And I definitely, if people are using it in a contest prep, we run it all the way in. We don't pull it out 2 weeks out and start changing everything. Mm-hmm. You will get a harder, drier look on Clen, and I would love to dig into just why is that. It'd be a fun thing to look at.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it'll get deep. It produces a slight hypokalemia. So low potassium levels is why it can cause cramps.
Yeah.
Right. So that in and of itself is going to induce diuresis, so that the body can restore potassium levels. It's kind of important to have normal blood potassium levels for the heart and that kind of stuff.
Well, boom! You just answered it.
Yeah. I mean, you can look deeper at why that happens. So and why, right? And why, and why, and why.
Yeah,
keep on digging. But yeah, that's kind of the basics. So she could try, some potassium supplementation. See if that helps.
Yeah.
Before she goes to bed. See, or you could get a beta blocker, but then that undoes the effect of the Clen. Yeah. So don't do that. That's
just pee more and look drier and harder and more ripped, Tanya. That's all I have to say. Yeah. That's my answer for you.
Yeah, you got to manage your water intake and that kind of stuff, right? But yeah, it's just, you're right. It's a diuretic. That's one of those things. During peak week, I just say generally for people is that whatever diuretic substances you have in your caffeine, for instance, that's one I particularly manipulate. But if you have various things that are agents of water loss,
yes,
clenbuterol being one of those, you would want to keep those in because those are going to help keep you in, or strategically implement those. And then you have agents of water retention, like yohimbine tends to cause water retention in some people.
Yeah,
that's one that you would then remove if you're wanting to reduce body water as part of your strategy for peak week. So. I've seen one instance I'm not going to touch on, but there was not too long ago, actually, someone I knew whose coach said this person was having trouble getting dry and coming in, as they wanted to on stage, and they were taking the Clen out, and they thought Clen caused water retention. And I was like, what? What? No, not at all. And you can tell that, you can see it when someone uses it for their first time, even with a small dose, from the urination, and you wake up the next day, and you can just see that there's water loss. So, and obviously Tanya's seen that at night when she's peeing a lot. So,
I had one of these for that. Remove your Clen before you get on stage.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and Scott, thank you for your patience with hanging out with us while you still manage Jessie over there. She sounds quiet now.
She's calm.
Okay, she sounds good. She sounds good.
Now that we're done.
When are you doing this German podcast for our German people?
Oh, that's Tuesday. I have no idea. Sometimes it takes. Some people get them out 2 days, and sometimes it takes weeks. I've had people come and say, "Oh, by the way, I'm putting the podcast out." I'm like,
"Which show?"
Podcast? We did a podcast. Oh, that's right. We did a podcast 2 months ago.
February. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. I have no idea when to come out, but apparently, I don't even know what his podcast is. To be honest, Okay. Like I said, I'm kind of a podcast whore. I have some other people I need to get back to. If Paul Barnett is listening, yes. I know he wanted to do a podcast, but I think he's like a week. But he's like a week out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
right?
Yeah. He was looking lean last time I saw him.
Yeah, he posted on Facebook. I think he just said, "This is the leanest I've ever been."
Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah.
So, but he just has. But I tell you what. For anyone who's listening, like now that I'm going to invite more podcasts. But it's such a pain in the ass because people message me on Instagram, which is fine, and sometimes like with Jesse, like podcasts were kind of impossible. It's hard even to do my consultations because she's being such a maniac.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and with Suki being blind, she'd get up and wander around, and so I had to postpone a lot of people, and I can't find their messages on Instagram because I think it intentionally, it sorts things differently over time, and you can't. And sometimes I don't remember who it was, and you can't like do a search for podcasts and find the message of podcasts. So it's mayhem for trying to stay organized because I sometimes have several podcasts that I'm trying to juggle and squeeze in. So if anyone is that I have forgotten about podcast wise, message me again, or maybe email me. It's so much email. I think, of course, I can find you. Then I can mark it, flag the email, and that kind of jazz. So
you guys have to understand, Scott is famous, and when you're dealing with a famous person, sometimes you have to message him multiple times. Okay, that's just how it goes.
I think Instagram does that shit on purpose. Like they so that you have to go and like message somebody more. They don't want you to be organized.
No, God,
they want you to have to fuck around more. And the more you fuck around,
the more you're. Oh, I didn't see that message, but I saw this message, and before you know it, I'm clicking on "We Rate Dogs" and sending posts to my wife, and all of that.
It's terrible. Yeah. You can make video calls on Instagram now.
I have never done that. No.
Someone called me. Someone was messaging me a couple of days ago, and I sent him a bunch of voice messages back. And then he's just like, fuck this. And he just called me. And I'm like, oh, shit.
You don't do that to people. You don't just randomly, whatever you guys do, don't randomly video Scott Stevenson, though. Like, you don't know him.
Right, yeah. I don't want to see some guy in his underwear saying, hey, buddy. No, this was someone who, he asked me a question. I know who he is. We had never really... friends of friends, like we were kind of loosely, Kevin Bacon style connected.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind it. I sent him like fucking 12 1-minute voice messages.
That's the other thing you hate. If I try to answer somebody's question on Instagram, I hate having to type it out. So I'll send them a voice memo because I can share a lot more information. But then I look down and it stopped recording at 1 minute, and I can't remember where I ended. So then I have to start over again.
How tough would it be to put a beep in there? At the 1 minute,
Yeah, how tough would that be, Instagram?
Or to extend, like you can make video calls now, and Facebook and WhatsApp, like they're all in cahoots with one another, right?
Yeah. So
sometimes you have to go over to Facebook. I've taken people, so let's take this to WhatsApp.
It'd be a premium premium version. If you get Meta, you get that.
Oh, right, okay.
I don't know. I'm just making that up. All right, guys, we appreciate you tuning in.
Yep. Jesse says goodbye.
Jesse, have a nice day. And guys, go to byobbcoach.com. You can get Scott's book over there. I'll be sure to paste the link in below to get the hardcover with a discount. And check me out if you want to reach out to coaching, McNallyDiets@gmail.com. And TrueNutrition.com. Get your greens formula. Apparently, I didn't even know that. Use our code THINK over there to get some savings. And, of course, to let them know that you support our programming. Otherwise, there's like 100 codes. You could use any of them, but only the code THINK helps us to support the show. So thank you guys, and we appreciate everybody tuning in. And thank you, Scott, as always, my friend. It is my pleasure to get to hang out with you every other week here.
Likewise. I feel the same way, my friend.
See you guys.
All right. Adios.
And my stomach really is finally feeling better now, too. Finally.